1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 5. You have 9 things to write down today, so get ready to write. I hope your neighbor, if you don't have any paper, I hope your neighbor has a white shirt on so you can write on their sleeve. 9 things to write down. Number 1, love is not rude. If it sees something wrong in somebody's life, it'll deal with it, but it'll talk to them privately. And if it's worth dealing with, it's worth setting up a time to deal with. Don't ever handle problems on the spot, unless it's just an emergency. Always wait. Being pastor of a large church, I had many opportunities to deal with people who had problems in their lives that needed to be corrected. I had a very simple philosophy. I would set up 30 minutes in my office. They would come in my office, and within 1 minute, I had told them the problem, and then I spent 29 minutes healing the relationship, and I never had anyone leave my presence mad. Most people set up a time to talk, and they're too nervous, they're too worried about getting to the problem, so they talk for 29 minutes, and in the last minute, they finally bring up the problem, and the person leaves upset. Don't be rude. Don't do that. Don't put people in situations like that. Put them in settings to where that you deal with the issue, but then you take plenty of time to heal the relationship. That's number 1. Love is not rude. The second thing in verse 5, love is not selfish. Love refuses to insist on its own privileges. Loving people don't say the world owes them. It doesn't say it has certain rights and certain things it ought to be allowed to do. It's concerned with its duties. Jesus said he did not come to be served, but to serve. Paul the Apostle said, I am a debtor. The barbarians, Jews, Greeks, he felt he owed, and he spent his whole life making sure he met the needs of others. Now, you have to take care of yourself. Jesus told us to love our neighbor as ourselves, so we have to love ourselves. But the limit to which we love ourselves is determined by when we begin to hurt others, when we begin to put our concerns above theirs. One of the most interesting things about selfishness, and this understanding that love is not selfish, one of the most interesting things about selfishness, it's one of the things we do that accomplishes the exact opposite of what we do it for. Fascinating psychological study here. Selfishness defeats its own purpose. We are selfish to make us happy. But selfishness always has the opposite effect. Half the world is on the wrong scent of happiness. They're worried about themselves. They're trying to get for themselves. But love leads us to the true way to happiness, and the true way to happiness is found not in having or in getting, but in giving. I've watched it for half a century with this dear lady over here. Her joy is in the giving. Young people, we're going to give you all a gift this morning in the Sunday school hour, because she can't live without giving. I'm ready to go to bed last night. She has this great idea, so we're working on gifts for you all. That's what she does, and she loves it. She lives in this world teaching me that love is not selfish. Number 3 in verse 13, in chapter 13, verse 5. Love is not irritable. Love has a good temper. It's not grouchy. It's not touchy. A troubling attitude is a sin. It is interesting, the peculiarity of anger is that it is the vice of the virtuous. This is the sin you can commit and still be an important person in a church. I would challenge you. What would you say you think about what are the 3 biggest sins in our country today? If you were to think of them, you're watching TV, you watch the news, what are you seeing? I guess, what would you say? Sex sins? Drug sins? Violence sins? I mean, you can just make a whole list of them. I submit to you that whatever list of sins you make about America, that all of them added together, do not hurt the church near as much as angry church members do. It is the one sin you can commit that we considered a really important, virtuous person. We explain it away, saying, well, my parents were that way. I've got Irish blood in me. I'm just of that nature. I'm turned that way, as if that makes it okay. It's very interesting. It's one of the few sins that we have all these little things that we kind of throw at it to make it okay. And yet the Bible is never nonchalant about a bad temper. The Bible's pretty clear. Don't let your spirit rush to be angry, for anger abides in the heart of fools. Ecclesiastes 7:9. Don't let the sun go down upon your anger. Ephesians 4:26. You are forbidden by God to ever be angry at anybody past sunset. Ruthie and I feel this is the most important verse in the Bible with regard to marriage. When we used to do premarital counseling, this was the verse we pounded on. You don't ever go to bed angry with each other. Now, my wife and I, we raised two very independent children. We're all free thinkers. We're all pretty much strong-willed, I guess you would say. We never allowed any one of the four of us to go to bed if upset with any of the other three. My children are 45 and 47. They never went to bed. We're allowed to go to bed angry with each other. One of us, Ruthie and I, have never gone to bed angry with each other because it is a sin to do so. So here it is, a sin that we overlook, that we turn our heads and look the other way. And yet there's few things more despicable than being a hothead. For sheer gratuitous misery production, few things are worse than anger. So if you have a temper, stop making excuses. Confess to your wife or your husband. Confess to your children you have sinned. It is a sin. Deal with it. Get right with God. Stop committing the vice of the virtuous. End it. I love being an interim. I'm out of here before long. Okay. Fourth thing in verse 5. All right, love is not rude, love is not selfish, love is not irritable. Number 4, love does not keep a record of wrongs. One of the finest arts of life is remembering what to forget. Love uses a small pencil to write memories and keeps beside it a huge eraser to erase them. A lot of times people nurse their anger to keep it warm. Boy, I tell you what, if you want to have a great marriage, here's you a great point. Don't when you bury the hatchet, don't leave the handle out. Don't ever go back again. Here, let me give you a good rule of thumb. Watch me. Everybody, all eyes on Pastor. Watch me. Watch this. It is a sin for you to go to bed angry with anyone in your household. So sunset is the boundary this way. Since you're not supposed to keep a record of wrongs, you never talk about anything that happened before sunrise. You keep everything in this day. Here's the world you live in when you're dealing with relationships and problems in your marriage, with your children, in your family, at work. You deal with things now. You set aside time. You work on it. And you draw a box. And you say, I am not going to go before sunrise and say to you, you always have a dirty room. I'm never going to say, you always want to have the final word. You always think that you're right and I'm wrong. You never go before sunrise. You never keep score. You don't keep a list of wrongs. You deal with the issue that day. Whatever the problem is, you have until sunset to get over it. And in dealing with it, you don't go before sunrise. You don't go into the past and dig stuff up. You don't keep bringing it up. You don't keep score. You live life right here in this box. Sunrise, sunset, making sure all relationships are kept up to date because you want to please God. All right, that's verse 5. Now, verse 6. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 6. Love finds no joy in unrighteousness, but rejoices in the truth. You see, it would be possible for a person to preach these sermons on love and say that you ought to be easy on sin. And when somebody commits a sin, you ought to look the other way. So Paul makes sure that we understand, time out, wait a minute, no. It always hurts love when it sees somebody sin, because love knows sin always brings sadness. You know that. So you don't ever look the other way. You deal with it, and you kindly, you prepare yourself, and you try to figure out ways to answer and to say that this is going to be awful for you. This is going to have terrible consequences. So love knows that sin brings sadness, and therefore love tries to spare the beloved. It takes no joy when it hears of someone who's in sin. It doesn't turn and look the other way. It knows this is sadness getting ready to expose itself, and love tries the best it can to step in. Now, few things are harder than for a Christian to deal with sin in the family. Ruthie and I are just like you. We have people in our extended family who are atheists, don't know the Lord. We have a family close to us who are not serving the Lord. And so how do you know what to do? How do you know how to handle that? If you love them, you can't just look the other way. You just can't ignore it and pretend it's all okay. Here's what I've learned. At age 69, grandpa, brother, son, uncle, once I, in love, have talked to someone and they know exactly where I stand and how I feel, you drop it. You don't keep bringing it up. You don't keep saying to someone, you know that's a sin. If you've said it, you don't have to say it again. Once they know your position and where you are, then you let it rest. That's where the love comes in. They know how you feel. They know your position. You've been true to, and you're a person of integrity. But then, by dropping it and just loving them, being kind to them and gracious to them, they see love. They know what's right. They know where you stand. But now, we surround them with love. That's verse 6. Now verse 7. The always verse of the Bible. 1 Corinthians 13:7. Love always protects. The word here is outroof. Isn't that a good word? Love outroofs all things. In other words, when you love someone, you want to protect them like a roof from the storm. You see something coming, you see some trouble, you want to step in, you want to help in any way that you can. You want to catch the storm before it hits them and totally blindsides them. But on the other side of a roof, the roof keeps in secrets and troubles, things that are going on inside the house. Charles Spurgeon, the greatest preacher maybe in history of the English-speaking people, and considered by all to be the greatest pastor, the greatest Baptist pastor in history. Charles Spurgeon says that love looks at the sin of others with a finger on its lips. It doesn't run out until there are times that things have to be told. We live in a real world. We have situations where people need to understand certain things. But love is always careful, always moves very slowly to bring the sins of other people into the light of day. Love would rather deal with things privately and quietly rather than publicly and loudly. So love always protects. It outroofs. It builds a roof. Protect from the outside and to help protect on the inside too. The second thing in verse 7, love always trusts. It believes all things. That means He wants to believe the best, to give people the benefit of the doubt. Love will trust a person until overwhelmingly evidence proves something else needs to be done. Now, once again, look at me. Look at my good eye here. Look at my good eye. Jesus told us not to judge others. One of the most misused and abused passages in all the Bible. Jesus says, judge not. You try to talk to someone about their sin, and what do they say? Judge not. They miss the whole point. Later on, in the same chapter, Jesus said you have to judge a tree by its fruit. You have to judge what people do. When Jesus said judge not, he was not talking about looking at a person who's committed a sin and just ignoring it and pretend it didn't happen. Go read the 7th chapter of Matthew. The very place where he says judge not, go down about 10 verses, I believe it is, and it talks about you have to judge a tree by the fruit that it bears. In other words, you have to judge a person by what they are doing. All right. So if Jesus, when he said judge not, was not talking about deeds, then what was he talking about? He was talking about judging people's motives. It is all right for you to say, you should not commit that sin. That's okay for you to say that in love and kindness. We've talked about how to do that. It is not okay for you to say, you obviously have never been born again. You've gone from the deed to a motive. It is okay for you to say, you should not do that. But it's not okay to say, you just want to be the boss. So you've gone from actions to motive. That's a sin. That's when you sin. When you say, you're always trying to get ahead of people. That's a sin. Because you've judged motives. It's okay for you to say to a person, don't come in here and be telling us what to do all the time. That's okay. That's deeds. When you transfer from deeds, though, to motive, that's when you sin. And so Jesus is saying, if you love people, you'll deal with their sins. You'll deal with the tree to see if it's a good fruit or bad fruit. You'll work on that, but then don't go underneath that and become judge of their heart. It's okay for you to judge their deeds, but only God judges the heart. Then, the third thing in verse 7. Number 1, love always protects. Love always trusts. Number 3, love always hopes. Now, let me make sure you understand here. Hope means to look at life without despair. It's not Pollyannish. It's not a naive optimism that denies reality. I think the best way for me to describe to you the loving hope is to say to you, a loving Christian refuses to view anyone's failure as final. What is it that causes a parent to continue to pray hopefully the prayers for a wayward child long after everybody else on the planet has given up? What is it? It's love. One of the things about love is love always hopes. What is it that will cause a woman who has seen her husband drink every day for 25 years? Watched him be abusive and unkind. What is it that causes her still to pray for him and to try to be loyal as best she can while protecting safety? What is it that causes her to pray hopefully, no matter what others think? It's love, because love hopes all things. Love always hopes. In the 22 years I was a second, one of the closest friends I had was an outright bitter atheist. He would send me hate mail. I was on television for 20 years a second. He would send me hate mail. And finally I got to where I couldn't stand it, so I had my administrative pastor, John Eady, come in. I said, John, told the secretaries from now on, any mail from this person. I don't want to see it. Can't deal with it. It goes to John. John, you will have to deal with it. Time went by, and one day John came into my office with an envelope. He laid this envelope in front of me on my desk and said, I think you'll need to see this one. It was from the atheist. I picked it up, and after all those months of years of hating me, he said he'd like to meet me. All right. I wrote him a letter. We met at a neutral location, and he was hiding behind a rack of books. It was very funny, and I was kind of nervous. I finally said, Larry, and he said, Pastor? He knew me. I knew he knew who I was because he watched me on television. And thus began a friendship that lasted for years. He's the most lost person I ever know. Now, that's not a theologically correct statement, but you understand what I'm communicating there. He's the most lost person I ever knew. He was awful. And we would always talk about the Lord every time we were together for years. I'd take him to do things with me. Every time I was with him, I'd talk to him about the Lord. And I said to him, now listen, if you go to hell, the day you go to hell, you will step over one of my prayers for you. I pray for you every day. And I will until you're gone. And that's what happened. He never repented. He never showed one interest. He never gave one ounce of any indication. Nothing. To the end, he hated my God. He loved me and hated my God. But when I got the call that he had died, I could say I had prayed for him that day. Why? Because hope just refuses to accept failure. It refuses to believe there's. Are you praying for a child that nobody else in the world is praying for? You better keep praying, because when you're gone, nobody else is going to pray. You're praying for a parent who's getting close to dying, and they have no interest in things of God. You better pray every day with all your heart, because when you're gone, nobody else is going to pray. If you love, you will pray. You will pray. Pray. Because love always hopes. And then finally, in verse 7, love always protects, it always trusts, it always hopes. Now look at that last thing, it always perseveres. It always endures. It just won't quit, no matter how painful it is to live the Christian life. No matter what it takes. No matter how many wounds. And you not only take it like a lost person takes it. A lost person lives life like a fatalist. No matter how bad the thing is that comes, they just grit their teeth and say, well, that's the way life is, and I'm not going to live. I'm not going to give in to that. You are a believer. You must live better than that. George Matheson, a great Christian, when he went blind, he said, Lord, I pray that I will accept this, not with silent resignation, but with joy. Not only with the absence of murmur, but with a song of joy. Beware a grumpy attitude toward life. Do you remember in the wilderness when the people complained against Moses, God said, they're complaining against me. You remember when they complained about how the food didn't taste good? God said, they're complaining against me. You are a Christ follower. When you are grumpy and dumpy, you're talking about how hard life is, and you're talking about life has not been fair to you, you are reflecting on God. And our problem is that we have not accepted in our salvation what the purpose of our salvation is. Most of our people think you get saved to be happy. You get saved to go to heaven when you die. And therefore, when troubles and problems come, you want to run from them. You hate them. You despise them. But to be a Christian means that you understand that you serve a God who, when he decided to do the greatest thing he ever did for humanity, You serve a God who, when he decided to do the most wonderful thing that he could conceive of, he chose suffering. He put his son on a cross. And from that moment on, Christians understand that when the suffering comes, when trouble comes, it is for the best, because the purpose of being a Christian is not to be happy, not even to go to heaven when you die. But the purpose of being a Christian is to be made more like Christ every day. To be made like Christ, to be like him, is to be the passion of our lives. And then, when the suffering comes and is overcome, we have won. There's victory. I battle this every day. I fight this every day. I've told you, Ruthie and I, we've had an unusually large amount of suffering in our life. I face things every day I do not understand. It wasn't supposed to be this way. And the struggle of life is to always remember, John, you are not here to be happy. You are not here to live some deliriously happy life. You are here to be like Jesus. And everything that God is doing in your life is to make you like his son. And therefore, in this, God is working to accomplish in you what you say you want. John, you say you want to be like Jesus. Well, this is what God is letting you do. He is giving you what you want. To be made like Christ. I think we've met our quota for today. I think you're done, and therefore I'm done. So let's bow our heads and close our eyes. Everybody, heads bowed, eyes closed. Now, where did the message meet you? Folks, I had to repent on about 4 of these 9 points this week before I could even get up and preach. Don't you ever think for 1 second the preacher gets up and preaches a one-way sermon. Always remember, when a preacher has one finger pointed at you, he has 3 pointed back at himself. I had to repent at least 4 of these points and said, Lord, you're going to help me do better in that area of my life. Now, where did the message meet you? Don't even pretend to tell me you can sit through this sermon and not be challenged. Don't even go there. God have mercy if you can say it. Where did the message meet you? Now, while you Christians pray about that, allow me to speak to people who are not Christian, who do not know the Lord. Wow, what a wonderful God we serve, who teaches us how to live well, how to live best. What a tender, gracious God. Why would you not want to know him? Why would you not surrender your life to him? And if you're not a Christ follower, maybe today is the day. You heard something this week in a conversation, heard something in the music, something in the message. There's something that has caused you to cross the line. Said, oh, that's all I need. That's all I needed. I'm ready. Here I come. If you'd like to do that, I'm going to lead you in a prayer. Now, the prayer doesn't save you. We don't believe in magic. No, we're not going there. What the prayer does, it allows you to pull your thoughts together like a laser beam focus. And the words become the vehicle on which your thoughts ride, on which your heart expresses itself. So if this prayer does that for you, why don't you repeat it silently as I pray it out loud, phrase by phrase. Here it is. Dear Jesus, I am sorry for my sin. Please forgive me. Come, live in my heart. I receive you as the master of my life. Amen. All right, everyone looking at me now. All eyes fastened on Pastor. The Bible teaches that once you receive Jesus, the first thing you're supposed to do is let people know, and that ultimately is expressed through baptism. So if you become a Christ follower, we sure would love to celebrate with you. Pastor Devin and Pastor Gary will be here at the front to receive those who need to come and make a decision for Christ today. Maybe you need to come join the church. What a great time to join the church. Be here when the new pastor comes. Whatever decision you need to make. Maybe you just need to come kneel and pray. You come and pray. You have the perfect place for people to pray. I like that. Come and pray. But whatever decision you need to make. As we stand together and sing a hymn of invitation.